My best friend set me up on a blind date. She swore he was perfect for me. I walked into that coffee shop nervous, hopeful, ready. Then I saw her sitting there instead of him. My heart stopped before she even said hello. I almost turned around and walked straight out. I stayed. That single choice changed my entire life. My name is Sarah Whitman, 29 years old, a paralegal in Charlotte, North Carolina. Raised in a family where dating women was never even discussed as a possibility. I'd spent years dating men I didn't love, terrified of disappointing my mother, my grandmother, and every expectation stitched into our small Southern Baptist community. Jenna, my best friend since college, texted me that Saturday morning insisting she'd found the one, and I owed her one blind date. No excuses. I agreed reluctantly, picturing another awkward dinner with some guy from her gym who talked only about protein shakes and fantasy football. The coffee shop on East Boulevard smelled like cinnamon and rain, and I scanned the room for a stranger holding a paperback novel. Our agreed signal. Instead, a woman with short dark hair and paint-stained fingers waved at me from a corner table, smiling like she already knew my name. "You must be Sarah," she said, standing to shake my hand. "I'm Alex. Jenna didn't tell you, did she?" I froze, my mouth dry, unsure whether to laugh, apologize, or bolt straight back through the door behind me. Something in her steady brown eyes made me sit down anyway, curiosity outweighing every warning bell ringing in my chest. We talked for 3 hours about nothing important: bad childhood haircuts, terrible bosses, our shared hatred of cilantro, and I forgot to be afraid. Alex Reyes was a firefighter paramedic, 28, originally from Savannah, blunt and funny in a way that made my careful, guarded life feel suddenly small. When she walked me to my car that night, she didn't try anything, just said, "I'd like to see you again, if that's okay." I said yes before my brain caught up with my mouth, and I drove home replaying her laugh the entire way. That night I lay awake staring at my ceiling, terrified of what it meant that I hadn't stopped smiling since I met her. We started meeting for coffee every week, then twice a week. Then it became something we both quietly built our schedules around. Alex never rushed me, never asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. Just let silence sit comfortably between us when words felt too heavy. I told my mother I was seeing someone new, carefully leaving out every pronoun, letting her assume whatever made Sunday dinner easier. Jenna apologized for the mix-up, but I caught the small satisfied smile she tried to hide behind her coffee cup. One rainy Tuesday, Alex showed up at my apartment with soup because I'd mentioned being sick, and I nearly cried at the door. "You didn't have to do this," I whispered, and she just shrugged like showing up for someone was the easiest thing in the world. We started holding hands in dark movie theaters first, testing the water in spaces where nobody we knew could see us. I hated myself a little for that caution, even as I understood exactly where it came from and how deep it ran. Alex never pushed, but I noticed the flicker of hurt whenever I pulled my hand back walking past a familiar face downtown. "I'm not ashamed of you," I told her one night, desperate for her to believe me. "I'm terrified of my family." She nodded slowly, tracing circles on my palm. "I know the difference, Sarah. I just need you to know I see it too." Alex told me about growing up in Savannah, how her mother stopped speaking to her the day she came out at 19. "She sends a Christmas card every year," Alex said quietly. "No message inside, just her name and mine. Like strangers." I reached for her hand across the table, understanding for the first time how much courage her steadiness actually required. We spent a whole Sunday cooking together, flour on our cheeks, laughing so hard I forgot to worry about anyone finding out. My brother Mark noticed the change in me first. The way I smiled at my phone, the softness that hadn't been there before. "You seeing someone?" he asked over burgers, and something in his tone told me he already suspected more than I'd said. I almost told him that night, the words sitting right behind my teeth, but fear swallowed them before they reached the air. Alex took me to meet her friends at a barbecue. And for one golden afternoon I let myself belong somewhere without pretending. Her friend Priya pulled me aside and said, "She hasn't looked at anyone like this in years. Don't break her heart." Promised I wouldn't. Meaning it completely. Not yet realizing how many people's expectations stood between that promise and reality. We celebrated 3 months with a hike up Crowder's Mountain. And at the summit Alex kissed me like the whole city could see. For one reckless moment. High above Charlotte. I didn't care who knew. Who judged. Who whispered behind cupped hands at church. Coming back down that mountain. Though. The old fear crept back in with every mile closer to my mother's house. I started keeping 2 phones worth of secrets in one phone. Deleting messages. Changing names. Living 2 versions of the same life. Alex never asked me to choose. Not once. But I could feel the quiet toll it took on her. Waiting in the shadows. One night she asked. Gently. "Do you ever think you'll be ready to tell them?" And I had no honest answer to give. I love my job. I love my family. I don't want to lose everything, I admitted. Hating how small that sounded out loud. "You won't lose me," she said. "But I need you to know I can't be a secret forever." Sarah. Nobody deserves that. I nodded. Promising myself I'd find the courage soon. Not realizing how quickly soon would be tested by forces outside my control. My grandmother's 80th birthday was approaching. A massive family gathering. And my mother had already started asking when I'd bring someone nice. She meant a man. Obviously. And the thought of that conversation sat like a stone in my stomach for weeks beforehand. Alex offered to skip the party entirely. To spare me the pressure. But something in me resisted letting her disappear from my life that easily. "I want you there," I told her. Surprising myself with how much I meant it despite every fear screaming otherwise. "Then I'll be there," she said simply. "As whatever you need me to be. For now. Until you're ready for more." That compromise felt like relief and betrayal all at once. Kindness wrapped around something that still asked her to shrink herself for me. Jenna started acting strange around that time. Quieter. Avoiding certain conversations. And I chalked it up to work stress at her marketing firm. I didn't yet know she was carrying her own secret. One that would eventually collide directly with mine in ways I never expected. My mother called one evening. Casually mentioning Daniel from church. A wonderful young man she thought I should meet before the birthday party. I told her I was seeing someone already, and she brightened instantly, asking a dozen questions I carefully dodged one by one. "Bring him to Grandma's party," she said, already planning table seating in her head, and I felt the walls closing in fast. I hung up and called Alex immediately, my voice shaking. Unsure how to explain the corner I'd unintentionally painted us both into. "We don't have to decide tonight," Alex said calmly, though I could hear something tighter underneath her usual steady patience. I barely slept that week, replaying every version of the conversation I'd need to have eventually with my entire extended family. At work, a coworker named Brittany mentioned seeing me at a restaurant with a woman, her tone light but her eyes sharp and watching. I laughed it off, calling Alex a friend from the gym, and hated the taste those easy, practiced lies left in my mouth. That night Alex found the text I'd sent Jenna describing the lie. And for the first time, I saw real hurt cross her face. "A friend from the gym," she repeated flatly. "Is that what I am to you when it's convenient, Sarah?" I tried to explain the fear. The years of Sunday sermons about sin. The way my grandmother once called a gay coworker confused. "I'm not asking you to fix your whole family overnight," Alex said. "I'm asking you to stop erasing me to strangers." We had our first real fight that night. Voices raised. Old wounds surfacing. Both of us exhausted from carrying separate versions of fear. She left my apartment without slamming the door, which somehow felt worse than if she had. Quiet and controlled and devastating. I cried harder that night than I had in years. torn between two lives that seemingly couldn't survive in the same room. Jenna showed up the next morning with coffee and no judgment. Just sat with me while I finally admitted everything out loud. "I've known for weeks," she said softly. "I just didn't know how to bring it up without you shutting down completely." I asked her why she'd set me up with Alex in the first place, and her expression shifted into something unreadable and careful. "Because I recognized something in the way you talked about being lonely," she said. "The same something I recognize in myself." My stomach dropped as I finally understood what she meant. The years of hints I'd somehow managed never to fully see. "You're gay too," I said. Not a question. And Jenna nodded, tears-filling eyes that had comforted me through countless breakups before. "I've been in love with you since junior year," she admitted quietly. "That's part of why setting you up hurt so much." The confession sat heavy between us, complicating everything, threatening the two most important relationships holding up my fragile new life. "I chose Alex for you anyway," Jenna said, wiping her eyes. "Because you deserve someone who isn't scared to love you loudly." I hugged her tightly, grateful and guilty and overwhelmed, promising our friendship mattered too much to break over feelings neither of us chose. We agreed to give each other space, honesty replacing the years of careful, comfortable avoidance that had quietly shaped our friendship. I texted Alex that afternoon, apologizing, asking for another chance, terrified she'd already decided I wasn't worth the exhausting wait. She agreed to meet, cautious but present, and I promised her honestly that I was done introducing her as a friend. "I can't promise I'll be brave overnight," I told her, "but I promise I'll stop hiding you from people who matter." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "That's all I've ever actually asked for, Sarah. Just don't erase me." We rebuilt slowly, gentler with each other, both of us aware how easily fear could crack something worth protecting. My mother called again about the birthday party, and this time I finally told her I'd be bringing someone special, nothing more. She assumed, and I let the assumption stand a little longer, gathering courage I hadn't fully found yet. My brother Mark cornered me at his house one weekend, asking directly if Alex was more than a friend from the gym. I hesitated too long, and he simply said, "Sarah, I've got eyes. I just want you to trust me enough to say it." I finally told him everything, and to my relief, he hugged me hard, saying he'd suspected since our last family dinner. "Mom's going to struggle," he warned honestly, "but I've got your back. Whatever happens at Grandma's party this weekend." His support gave me a sliver of courage I clung to as the birthday party crept closer on the calendar. 2 nights before the party, Mark accidentally mentioned Alex's name to our mother, thinking she already knew the truth. She called me immediately, voice sharp and confused, demanding to know who Alex was and why my brother spoke like it mattered. I hadn't planned to come out over the phone, panicked and unprepared, but the moment had arrived whether I was ready or not. "Alex is the woman I've been seeing for 4 months, I said, my voice shaking but somehow steady enough to finish the sentence. Silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped, until she finally said, "I need time, Sarah," and hung up. I sat on my kitchen floor for an hour, phone in hand, waiting for a call back that didn't come that night. Alex found me there when she arrived, and instead of saying anything, she simply sat down beside me on the cold tile. "I didn't want it to happen like this," I whispered. "Not by accident. Not with her hanging up on me." "You still told her," Alex said gently. "That still counts, Sarah. Even if it wasn't the version you'd planned." My mother didn't call for 3 days, and the silence felt louder than any argument we'd ever had before. At work, Brittany's earlier comment resurfaced when I overheard her mentioning it to a senior partner near the break room. I worried my job at Caldwell and Pierce, a firm known for its conservative older partners, might be quietly at risk now. My supervisor, Diane, called me into her office, and my stomach dropped, certain I was about to be reprimanded or worse. "I heard some office gossip," Diane said carefully. And I want you to know this firm doesn't tolerate that kind of talk. Relief flooded through me as she explained she'd already spoken to Brittany about spreading personal rumors around the office. Your work speaks for itself, Diane added. Who you love isn't anyone's business here. Understood. I thanked her, stunned by the kindness. I later learned Diane herself had a sister who was gay, disowned by their own parents decades earlier in rural Georgia. That small act of quiet solidarity gave me strength I didn't know I still needed heading into the hardest weekend of my life. My grandmother called 2 days before her own birthday party, her voice steady, asking simply, "Are you bringing your Alex, dear?" I nearly dropped the phone, certain my mother had told her everything already, bracing myself for rejection from the family matriarch. Mom told me, my grandmother said calmly. I wanted to hear it from you before Saturday. If that's all right with you. I confirmed everything, voice trembling, expecting disappointment from the woman who'd taught every grandchild to recite scripture before dinner. Instead, she was quiet for a long moment before saying, "Bring her. Sarah. I'd like to finally meet the person who makes you smile like this." I sat stunned on my couch afterward, unable to reconcile her gentle response with everything I'd assumed about her beliefs my whole life. My mother, meanwhile, remained distant. Short replies to texts. No mention of Saturday. No indication whether we'd even see each other there. Alex noticed my anxiety building all week and offered again to stay home, sparing me the potential public confrontation entirely. No, I said firmly this time. I've spent my whole life managing everyone else's comfort. I'm done doing that at my own expense. Saturday arrived gray and humid, the kind of Charlotte summer day that makes every fabric cling and every nerve feel raw. My grandmother's backyard filled with relatives, folding chairs, potato salad, and the low hum of gospel music from a portable speaker. Alex squeezed my hand in the car before we walked in together, both of us visibly bracing for whatever waited inside. My mother saw us first, her face unreadable, standing rigid near the dessert table surrounded by aunts who hadn't yet noticed. "Mom," I said carefully, "this is Alex." The silence that followed felt long enough to swallow the entire backyard whole. "It's nice to finally meet you," Alex offered, extending a hand my mother stared at for 3 agonizing seconds before shaking it stiffly. Conversation resumed around us in scattered pockets, but I felt every eye in that backyard tracking our every movement carefully. My Aunt Patricia leaned toward my cousin, whispering something behind her hand, and I forced myself not to react to it. My grandmother appeared then, taking Alex's arm like she'd known her for years, introducing her proudly to anyone within earshot. "This is Alex, Sarah's girlfriend," she announced simply, and the word girlfriend landed in that yard like a small, deliberate thunderclap. My mother's fork clattered against her plate, and she excused herself abruptly, walking briskly toward the house without another word. I followed her inside, finding her gripping the kitchen counter, staring out the window at the party she'd built for weeks. "How could you humiliate me like this? In front of everyone," she whispered, not turning around, her shoulders tight and shaking slightly. "I'm not trying to humiliate you," I said. "I'm trying to stop lying to everyone, including myself, for your comfort. This isn't how we raised you," she said, finally facing me, eyes red. "What will people at church say?" "Sarah, I don't know," I admitted honestly. "But I can't keep shrinking myself smaller every year just to keep everyone else comfortable." My grandmother appeared quietly in the doorway then, something in her expression stopping both of us mid-argument entirely. "Linda," she said gently to my mother, "come sit with me a moment. There's something I never told you about your Aunt Ruth." My mother's face shifted, confused, as my grandmother led her to the small kitchen table, gesturing for me to stay too. "Ruth loved a woman named Dorothy. Back in 1961, my grandmother said quietly. "We never spoke of it. I've regretted that silence for 60 years. My mother stared, speechless, as my grandmother described the sister she'd rarely mentioned, sent away to visit relatives, and never quite the same again. I watched my sister disappear a little more every year after that, my grandmother said, voice cracking slightly. I won't watch it happen to Sarah. The kitchen fell silent except for distant party sounds drifting through the screen door. Laughter that felt impossibly far away now. My mother reached for my hand across the table. Tentative. Uncertain, but reaching nonetheless, which felt like more than I'd hoped for. I need time, she said again, echoing her earlier words, but softer now. Less like rejection and more like genuine struggle. I can give you time, I said. I just need you to try. Mom. That's all I'm asking for right now. We rejoined the party eventually, tension still humming beneath the surface. But something had shifted. Cracked open just slightly. Alex found me by the fence line, checking in quietly, and I told her everything my grandmother had revealed inside. That took real courage, Alex said. For your grandmother to say that. After 60 years of silence about her own sister. The party continued awkwardly but survivably. My mother watching from a distance. Not warm yet, but no longer actively hostile either. 3 weeks passed with slow, careful progress. My mother texting occasionally. Small olive branches disguised as ordinary conversation about work. Then, on a Thursday night, my phone rang with Alex's coworker's name, and my entire body went cold before I even answered. There's been a fire on Selwyn Avenue, the voice said. Alex went in for a trapped resident. She's been taken to Presbyterian Hospital. I don't remember driving there. Only gripping the steering wheel, praying to a God I wasn't sure still listened to me. The emergency room felt impossibly bright and sterile, and I paced the waiting area unable to sit still for even a minute. A nurse finally called my name, and I nearly collapsed with relief hearing that Alex had smoke inhalation but would fully recover. I sat beside her hospital bed for hours, holding her hand, watching her chest rise and fall beneath the thin blue blanket. You scared me half to death, I whispered when she finally woke. And she managed a weak, tired smile in response. Occupational hazard, she joked hoarsely. And I laughed despite the tears streaming freely down my face at her bedside. My mother showed up unexpectedly around midnight, having heard from Mark, standing awkwardly in the doorway of the hospital room. I came as soon as I heard, she said quietly, eyes fixed on Alex. Is she going to be all right? She's stable, I said, watching my mother carefully, unsure what had actually brought her here in the middle of the night. My mother stepped closer to the bed, studying Alex's soot-streaked face, the oxygen tube, the bandage wrapped around her forearm. She ran into a burning building for a stranger, my mother said slowly, almost to herself. Something shifting visibly behind her eyes. That's who she is, I said. Brave. Even when it costs her. I love her. Mom. That's never going to change. My mother was quiet for a long moment, then reached out and gently touched Alex's uninjured hand resting on the blanket. Thank you for keeping her safe all these months, she said softly, voice breaking on the last word despite herself. I felt something loosen in my chest that had been clenched tight for over a year. Watching my mother finally see us. Alex squeezed my mother's hand weakly. I love your daughter, Mrs. Whitman. I'd run into fire for her too, if I had to. My mother laughed through sudden tears. An unexpected, watery sound I hadn't heard from her in longer than I could remember. Call me Linda, she said. Mrs. Whitman makes me sound like I'm still angry with you, which I'm trying very hard not to be. We stayed at the hospital until dawn, my mother bringing coffee for everyone. Small gestures rebuilding something I thought we'd lost. Alex was discharged 2 days later, and my mother insisted on cooking dinner for both of us that following Sunday. The dinner was awkward at first. Careful conversation, But by dessert my mother was asking Alex genuine questions about firehouse life. "I'm sorry it took almost losing her for me to really look at what you two have," my mother admitted quietly afterward. "I'm just grateful you're looking now," I said, hugging her tightly, feeling years of careful distance finally beginning to close. Word spread through the extended family slowly, some relatives warming quickly, others requiring more time, a few never fully coming around. Aunt Patricia sent a stiff, awkward card congratulating me on finding happiness, which felt like progress even in its clumsy formality. At work, Diane quietly promoted me to senior paralegal that fall, mentioning she valued people brave enough to show up fully. Jenna and I remained close, our friendship stronger for the honesty, and she eventually started dating someone she introduced proudly. No secrets attached. I asked her once if things felt strange between us now, and she smiled. "Strange is fine, Sarah. Honest is better." Alex moved into my apartment that October, and my mother helped us carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs without complaint. My grandmother visited often after that, bringing old photographs of Aunt Ruth, piecing together a history our family had buried for decades. "I wish I'd known Dorothy," my grandmother said one afternoon, studying a faded photo. "I think she would have liked you, Sarah." We found Ruth's old letters in my grandmother's attic that winter, decades of longing carefully preserved in a shoebox nobody had opened. Reading them together, my mother cried quietly, finally understanding the family silence that had shaped generations before mine even began. "We're not repeating that history," my mother said firmly, closing the shoebox gently. "Not with you. Not with anyone else in this family." Alex proposed the following spring, on the same mountain summit where we'd shared our first reckless kiss 2 years earlier. I said yes before she even finished the question, both of us laughing and crying at 6,000 feet above Charlotte. My mother helped plan the wedding, insisting on hosting it in my grandmother's backyard, the same yard where everything had once cracked open. Brittany, oddly enough, sent a genuine apology that spring, admitting she'd been unkind out of her own unresolved fear and jealousy. I forgave her, understanding better than most how fear could twist into cruelty when a person felt threatened by difference. My grandmother walked me partway down the aisle herself, insisting she wanted one dance with the bravest girl in this family. My mother sat in the front row, tears streaming freely, no longer hiding her pride behind careful, guarded Southern composure. Standing across from Alex under string lights in that familiar backyard, I finally understood what real, unashamed love felt like. We didn't need permission anymore, just each other. And a family slowly learning that love never needed defending in the first place. Looking back at the woman who once nearly walked out of that coffee shop, I barely recognize her fear anymore. I went on a blind date expecting nothing, and found the woman who taught my entire family how to love without conditions. Some detours change everything for the better. Mine led me home, to Alex, and to a life I never dared imagine. Fendi.